World of Tanks has gone through so many changes, with tanks being removed and added or changed from different tiers and classes. And in light of the brand new tech tree rework which is coming to World of Tanks, I thought I'd give you a nostalgia rush and look at the old tanks in World of Tanks. Now I'll be going over the first three nations, and that is Russia, Germany and America. The time that those nations will be in the video will be on the screen, as well as the nations. But yeah, if I've missed a couple tanks, please let me know in the comments below, and maybe I'll make a part 2 about this. Anyways, let's get right into the video. So Russia, we will start with the heavy tanks, more specifically the KV tank. Now you must be thinking, Jordan, there's 7 KV tanks in the game. Which one are you going to be talking about? Well, I'm going to be talking about the one and only KV. This tank was the original KV at tier 5, which has now been replaced by the KV1, the KV2, and now the KV1S at tier 5. The KV was basically a hybrid between the 1 and the 2, so the stock version was the KV1 and the upgraded version was the KV2's turret, as well as its top 107mm ZIS-6, which would do 300 HP of damage, and you could also use the derp gun on the KV2 at tier 5 rather than tier 6, which means you will basically be one-shotting most tanks that you come up against at tier 5. The KV was a monster of a tank at tier 5, and it's basically a good thing that Wargaming nerfed it. You can see why, and for a lot of players this was a free way to get the KV1 and the KV2. But let's talk about another monster in the Russian heavy tank line, that is the KV1S. Now you may be wondering, Jordan, the KV1S is a tier 5 in the Russian tech tree currently. Well, back in the day it was a tier 6 with the 122mm D25T, which would do 390 alpha damage. This gun is the current top gun on the tier 7 IS heavy tank, which, well, goes to show how good this tank would have been, being able to shave off anyone's hit points or half of them in one single shot, and able to competitively fight against tier 7 and even higher tanks. And if you put this into perspective, tanks like the M6, the tier 6 heavy tank in the American tech tree, could only do around 150 alpha damage, while this thing was pumping out of 390, which is more than double. This is essentially an IS at tier 6. Another thing to note, the KV3, a tier 7 heavy tank, was at tier 6 back in the day. On note of heavy tanks, the IS4 was the tier 9 before the IS7 in the tech tree, and the IS8 was the T10, or what the T10 is now, was the IS8 when that was added into World of Tanks. And with artillery as well, they had a +3 matchmaking, and they could only go to tier 8. And it's interesting, obviously back in the day you could only go to tier 8, with the SU-14 1 and 2 in the current tech tree just being the SU-14 at tier 6. The SU-8 and the S-51 at tier 7 now were tier 6s as well. And do you also remember when artillery could one-shot anything? I don't miss that at all, and I know all of you don't miss that unless you're a dirty pig lord playing artillery all day. Now what's interesting to note is that in early World of Tanks concepts, before SPG or self-propelled gun became the blanket class for artillery, it was split between light, medium and heavy self-propelled guns, much like light, medium and heavy tanks in the game. This was also the same for tank destroyers. Tank destroyers also had the same classification, but it might just be a sub-classification under tank destroyer or SPG that's currently still in the game. We don't know, but in the old tech trees this was definitely the case. Another thing to note, when the rear casemate tank destroyers for the Russian tech tree came into the game, the SU-122-54 was still in the tech tree, but that's obviously gone now. Now on to Germany, and obviously the first tech tree that I started researching properly in World of Tanks, and the first tech tree that I have a tier 10 on, and well, the only tech tree because I'm shit at the game. Firstly, the most nostalgic tanks for me, the Panzer IV had a Skalmerturn turret and the 7.5cm KWK 44-1L70. Pretty much the tier 6 Panzer IVS is now, but at tier 5. This was a very OP tank and was very fun to play. I do miss it in the tech tree, but now it's got that derp gun to make up for it. I don't know if it balances out. If any of you nostalgic World of Tanks players want to let me know which one you think was better, the Panzer IV, the old one, or the new one with the dirt gun, please let me know. Speaking of medium tanks, remember the now heavy tanks, the VK3001H and the 3601H. They were medium tank, and the VK3001H was at tier 6 with its big triangular dome of a turret. It was like Megamind for a turret on a tank. And also, do you remember that very weird placement of the VK3002D in the German tech tree? That was probably one of the biggest mistakes when I bought that, because then I was basically stuck. Other things to note, the LUCHS was at tier 3, basically what the Panzer 1C is now, but the look. Now if you see how competitive the LUCHS is at tier 4, think of that at tier 3. Now looking at tank destroyers, back in 2013, I know you guys are going to get scared when you hear this. There was a tank called the Waffentrager E100, which was the scariest tank to come across at tier 10. It had a 6 or 7 shell autoloader, I don't remember exactly, but that could clip any tier 10 tank as long as RNG was on your side and you had some rather good rolls with some of your shots. One tank for the Germans that I forgot to mention was the Aufklarungpanzer PANTHER. This was a tier 7 light tank which had a Panzer III's turret or a Leopard's turret on the hull of a Panther, and it would have the same stopping power or ramming power as the Panther, making it an incredibly fast and dangerous ramming light tank, which I miss in the tech tree. Now the final destination for our nostalgia trip is America. Oh America, how could I forget about you? There are some tanks that we all love and want back, and some tanks that we didn't even know were in the game. Firstly, I want to talk about the tank that comes to everyone's mind when you speak about the old American tech tree, and that is the God forbidden, absolutely broken T-18 tank destroyer at tier 2. This was as well with the T-82, which is now the T-82 HMC, which was at tier 3, but the T-18 is special. This tier 2 tank destroyer was really good, strangely. Its frontal hull armor was like a tier 4's. Nothing could penetrate it unless you fired premium rounds. Do you remember the T-57, the tank that's no longer in the game? That little tier 2 artillery, that tank was in the game for so long, and now it's been replaced with the T1 HMC. Now we're going to go back to tank destroyers really quickly. Obviously we've got the Jackson in the game, but do any of you remember when that was called the M36 Slugger? Someone who actually knows something about this Slugger name, please tell me in the comments below why it was called the Slugger in the first place and why it was changed. Now I think the biggest change for the American tech tree comes from their heavy tanks. Now obviously you think about the American tech tree, you think of the T-18, but a lot of you will not remember, because it's now a tank destroyer, that the T-30, the turreted tier 9 tank destroyer, was actually the first tier 10 in the American tech tree. It was the tier 10 heavy tank. That and the now terribly bad premium tier 8 heavy tank, the T-34, which was at tier 9 in the old tech tree, and the T-30 was at tier 10. Now the early concepts of World of Tanks shown a tier 8 in the American tech tree. Now you may be thinking, Jordan, the current tier 8 is a Pershing, and that's always been the case. Well, the first ever prototype for the American tech tree, the tier 8, was the T-32. Now I wonder what actually happened with this tank. It had a model, it was in the trailer, and then it was taken out. Now on the topic of medium tanks, I'm going to leave it off with this note. The M7 was a medium tank, and it was an amazing tank. I want the old M7 back, and I really hope it changes back to a medium tank in this new tech tree rework. I think it does, I'm not too sure, but yeah. Now guys, this was the old tanks of World of Tanks, or some of the changed tanks in World of Tanks. I know I've missed some. Please let me know which ones I've missed, and if I've got any errors, please let me know, because it really helps me out a ton. It allows me to perfect my videos in the future and maybe make different episodes regarding this one. I hope you enjoyed. The support on this channel lately has been amazing. Be sure to check out some of my other videos. I upload information videos like this one on Mondays and funny moments on Fridays, and if you enjoy all of that, please consider subscribing. If you enjoyed this video, let's get this to 25 likes, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one, which will be on Friday.